Up here in Big Brundit, you got Little Brundit, you got Bray, you got Back Lake here in Bray. You got all these areas back here with all the water that we've had pushed back in here. All these little back lake areas have become just really active. Lots of bait fish, lots of quality fish in there, small fish, over some, a little bit of everything's been in there. We've caught trout, we've caught redfish, we've caught some black drum, squeezed out a flounder here or there. So yeah, it's been quite good. A little bit different in some spots, but it's pretty much for the most part, it's been pretty consistent as far as what we're catching. Trout, redfish mainly, and then you can squeeze the other two that have been in there. But yeah, it's been very good. Uh, Lots of different things in there. Again, this higher water that we've had in here now for 5 or 6 days has been very beneficial for lots of these little back lake areas back in here. So you're able to get a boat in here. So yeah, V-hull boat, nah, probably not going to. But if you got you a cat boat or a really skinny running boat that you can get back in lots of these areas, it really opens up for you because there's tons of areas. Slides all the way over here into Oyster Bayou, Cottonwood Bayou. All these areas have just lit up, and that's lots of fishing area. So if you know some cut throughs, you can come through on the air side, or you can come through down on the Bray Cove side and kind of mess around and get back into some of these spots, or come around to the San Antonio Bay side and get up into those. So it just kind of depends on where you want to be and how you want to approach some of these particular areas. Shorelines have been good on these insides. There's been, say, fish that's pushed up and down. We've even found a few small pods of reds that have pushed back. I mean, they're not super big, maybe 15 to 20 fish that's kind of messed around there. So we weren't able to pull some fish out of those. Baits that we've been primarily chunking in and around these, I've been throwing some topwater baits. Other clients have been throwing the burner shad, been throwing the original size, throwing the knock and tail, throwing the marker 54 jerk shrimp, soft dines, double D's, everything. That's just tells you what kind of water levels that we have in these back lakes. Typically, they're calf to knee deep on a good day. Right now, they're upper thigh, waist deep, maybe even belly deep in some spots. So it really has opened up lots of water for you. If you're able to capitalize and take advantage of this right now, please do so, because you're going to do yourself a favor, because you can put yourself in a lot of good situations to catch some fish and back in these areas. Now, just going back to the baits that we've been using color wise, Twisted Tea's been very good. White Ice, Bone Diamond have been very good. Big Papa has been very good for us. Another flavor, and that's been the Purple Rain has been pretty good. Chicken of the Sea has been pretty good for us. Watermelon Red in a variety of different baits, whether it be a Little John, whether it be a knock and tail, or other baits that you may like. Provoker, that's another one. Of course, that's a mirror lure bait there. Provoker has been used somewhat, so it's been pretty good. Now, one thing to remember, we're transitioning moon, and we're fixing to be into those few days prior to a new moon. So when you got the new moon in play, everything becomes in play. Throw a big bait, throw a small bait, throw a medium-sized bait, whatever you want. Throw everything. Everything becomes in part of the game. So, put a little bit of diversity in your box if you're wading back in some of these areas, and see what you can come up with. So in the knock and tail, it's been the White Ice, it's been the Rogue, it's been good. When we've had opportunities to have some good clean water, of course the greenback has been solid as well in both flavors of water. But then of course the heavy metal has been very good for us in some cleaner water, so it shows out really well. We've had this northeast breeze kicking here for us for the last couple of days, 3 days since I think it's Friday. It started moving in here. We had that big front push through on Thursday, and so it's changed fishing up somewhat. Water level is still same, but the as far as the activity of fish, there's fish there. It's just kind of changed up how they want to eat and what they're approaching. So that's why I say make sure that you got a lot of different variety in your box when you go back in some of these areas. So we're 3-4 days after the front pushed through. So everything should start to come back to what it was prior to that, unless we have another front that's approaching, which at the moment I don't think that we do. But again, once they start sliding down, they'll start lining up and they'll start coming down this way more often than not. So take advantage of these areas back here. Majors and minors, man, they've been very good for us. Lots of activity in and around those time frames for us, depending on when it is that you're wanting to fish it. If wherever that minor falls or where the major falls, if you want to stay out that long, or if you got a shorter bite window, you got that. So, like I say, that all that back in these areas has been, again, very good for us in around those time frames. Just get out there and get on these shorelines, work them, be very thorough with it, and you'll find and locate your fish back in these areas. Paul's Mott area, Long Reef Bend, all this area in here has opened all up really well as far as the back lakes go. We get back in here in Fence Lake, we get back here in Sand Lake, and work all these areas now. So all this stuff has opened up really well for us because of all the water that's been pushed in here. So take advantage of these back lake areas when it's really, really high water like that, because you can really have a good time back in some of these areas. You can locate you some redfish, maybe some black drum, pull out a quality trout or two, especially back in these areas like this. We've just been working the shorelines and grass line edges, knowing where some of the little deeper guts are, little drop edges and stuff. We've been working those as well. We've had pretty decent success with that. Nothing as far as great numbers go, but just very consistent. I take consistent every day of the week, and that's primarily what we're looking for. Just get on these edges and work that. If you've been back in these areas and you've fished it before, then you know what I'm talking about as far as what type of how big a back lake that it truly is and how much structure that you have back in these areas. So really take advantage of that while you can, because that water's going to drop out on us at some point in time, and then everything will go back skinny again, or at least be back to a normal tide. So it'll be a little bit more difficult to work some of these areas, especially if you don't have the right kind of boat to get into that. So with the higher tides, get back in there while you can. Another thing in mind too, we're a few days into October here, so when November cranks up, just remember duck season will be in full swing. So all that changes too, because there's lots of duck blinds back in these areas, and I know there's lots of hunters that get put back in these blinds there. So you'll want to stay away from those types of areas during that time frame. So anyway, while you can get to these areas, do so. Just kind of migrate around in here, look, play with, get out of your boat and put it there. If you find you a stretch of water that looks good, that's got some bait working on it, if you want to throw a topwater, get a topwater out, because this is prime back here for a topwater bait. It doesn't matter which topwater that you like, whether it's a spook or a mirror lure or a Mansfield knocker, it doesn't matter. All of them are good. They're all being very effective. White bellies are the main ones that I throw on that particular thing, whatever brand that you want. It really doesn't matter. You just want to mimic what that bait fish is doing as far as what the belly looks like, and most of them are white or a really light gray belly. So that's why I say that type of bait color as far as the topwater goes. The burner shads in all the different flavors have been very good for us back here. The original size in the down south has been very good for us. Same flavors: Twisted Tea, Big Papa, Chicken of the Sea, Watermelon Red, White Ice, Bone Diamond. All of those have been very good and have been very productive for us, each and every one in their own color right. So we've had 2 guys to 3 guys to 5 guys, and everybody's have something different on as far as the color goes, and everybody seems to be catching fish on a pretty consistent basis. So it's not any one particular flavor that they're liking; they're just liking the activity of the bait. Through the supermodel that's in there too. My favorite on that is either the Chicken of the Sea, Salt Sassy, or Magic Grass in the supermodels of that. But if you've got your own flavor that you like, I would suggest you throw it to see if they want to react to it. So we've had pretty decent success with those as well, especially in these back lake areas. Like I say, grass lines, little pads of grass that you see back in there, you work around those, especially if you got a little bit of bait flipping in that. And then, of course, if you know where the little deeper guts are, the little pools, you can wade in and wade around those particular areas there, and you may pull out you some black drum. So I've been pleasantly surprised that we were throwing some Twisted Tea the other day when that front was pushing in on us, and black drum were eating it with no problem. I was, like I say, pleasantly surprised with that, but a little taken back at the same time, because that typically does not happen with the black drum. But anyway, just put that in your back pocket there and throw it and see what happens for you. Again, majors and minors back in these areas, it's all part of the game. You still want to fish in and around those time frames. On the knock and tail side of it, you want the heavy metal, Rogue, White Ice for that as well. Greenbacks has been pretty good. in the knock and tail. And then as far as the shrimp goes, we've just been bouncing the marker 54 off the deeper pools and just throwing them out there and just bouncing them off the bottom. Had very moderate success, but nonetheless very consistent success with those as well. So all those be coming into play. If you want to throw the soft dines in the deeper water, I suggest if you're going to throw a soft dine, you'd have at least waist deep water so it has a little bit of water column there that bait can really float down into, so you have a really good opportunity to work it in there. But another thing you have to worry about with that too, there's a bunch of floating grass in there, so it has a tendency to really kind of bind your hooks and stuff up. So just something to be aware of. But again, take advantage of this higher water in these back lakes right now while we still have it, and look for your baits. Again, the same things. Cooler weather, so make sure you're dressed appropriately. And just, again, pay attention to what your weather patterns are, because it can get kind of nasty out there this time of year. Mission Bay. Again, this was a great opportunity now with the, again, higher tides that we have in play. This area back in Mission Bay, it becomes really good, man. You can get everything here on the right-hand side and fish all that there. You can come to the other side on the left-hand side where the mangrove shoreline is and get on this little deeper shoreline that way, all the way back to Mission River and Mission Lake. Mission Lake specifically is one of the areas that I like to get into. And then, of course, there off the Mission River that comes in, you got a couple of little back bays that dump off of that. So when that water really pushes up, you have an opportunity to catch some nice redfish that get back in some of those areas. That whole back shoreline of Mission Bay, it's very good, especially when the higher tides is. It kind of lights everything up for you. Plenty of good structure that's in there. You're able to get a little bit closer to the shoreline and find and locate some redfish that are pushing up that. Maybe even a nice individual better slot trout, a 22 to 24. There's someone there that's just kind of roaming around back there looking for something to eat. But you get back there in the lake, Mission Lake, you got a huge amount of shoreline that's back there. And one thing to remember, Mission Lake's, silty, soft, sandy-ish back in there. So if you're going to wade it, just make sure that you got your boots laced up really well, because you can find some calf deep stuff in some areas. So if you don't really want to contend with that and you don't want to mess with that, get on your trolling motor and work the shorelines, just like what these freshwater anglers do when they're working for bass and stuff up on those shorelines. Same type of technique. It's perfect for back in this area. Again, with this amount of water and stuff. Of course, like your redfish tournament guys, they got tower boats and stuff like that. So they're doing the same type of thing, just kind of looking, searching, working the shoreline edges. You got lots of grass that's there. I like to get back there with the topwater bait and get right on that grass line and work that topwater bait down there, because you can get some of those redfish come blowing up out of that grass because they're looking for shrimp back in there. And that being said, this is where your jerk shrimp from marker 54 becomes very, very productive, especially in that back lake area. That shrimp gets up in that grass and starts jumping and moving around, and those redfish get up in there and chase it. So you have a great opportunity to catch you some pretty good fish using that particular bait. The white or the brown, either one has been fine. If you don't want to free line it, tie it up underneath a popping cork, and you can bang away with that as well. Just kind of check what your depth of your water is, so you're not just dragging it on the bottom, but it has a little bit of jumpness to it when you're working that bait. Back to the down south on the Twisted Tea, Big Papa. Just look at what your water clarity is. White ice, Bone Diamond have all been very productive for us. The white ice and Bone Diamond specifically about the last 3 weeks have really come to life. Those fish are starting to react to it really well. So make sure that you have that flavor in there. Of course, in your knock and tail, same flavors. Rogue has been consistent since it came out. It really hasn't dropped off. Some particular days they want something else on average, or just for kicks and giggles sometimes. But for the most part, if you put a Rogue on there, you're going to catch fish with it consistently. So dirtier water, cleaner water. It's got lots of flake in it. It's great dark water bait. So really make sure you have some of those in your box available to you whenever you're fishing these. And you'll do yourself a favor, and you'll find some good fish with that particular bait. Again, the soft dine, there's plenty of water in there right now for you to work it. Make sure that you pay attention to what your tides are doing, because it's fluctuating somewhat, but it's still way up on the higher side. And then, of course, your mirror lure, like your Little Johns, those have all been good in multiple flavors. Not anything one particular thing, but just from a darting bait standpoint, it does really good for you. provoker. It's a very, along the mirror lure line. It's a very productive and very durable bait as well, just like the Little John, and it gives you just a little bit different look. We're fixing to be in the new moon phase, so that's something else that you may want to slide into your box, pick you up a package of those, and just have some available to you just for a different look. Again, back on the supermodel side for down south, the flavors I mentioned earlier, Magic Grass, Chicken of the Sea, very good, Salt Sassy. Those have all been well. Some of this water now that we've had, pretty decent rain inland, and we've had some runoff, so some of it's a little bit dirtier water back in some of these lakes from the river and stuff. So you may want to have you a little bit of chartreuse or something like the Twisted Tea really does well. So I like to throw that in really super dirty water and Twisted Tea because it stands out as well. Again, make sure that you're paying attention to your majors and minors, what's going on with that. And again, we're probably fixing to start having fronts that are going to start lining up here. So make sure that you always keep an eye this time of the year moving forward on what your weather patterns are doing and what's going on, because you don't want to be caught out in some of these issues because they can be kind of nasty.